what the data indicates is, and this was a big analysis done by some researchers at Harvard, they found that families who eat together on a consistent basis, those family members consume significantly higher amounts of real foods, fruits and vegetables, and by nature, tremendously more essential nutrients that prevent diseases.
And just eating together.
And significantly less ultra-processed foods.
Peace and riches blessings. I am Michael B. Beckwith, the host of Take Back Your Mind. Peace and blessings, everyone. As you're hearing my voice right now, welcoming you to Take Back Your Mind, the podcast. I am Michael B. Beckwith, the host of Take Back Your Mind. Just say to yourself right now, I love my life. I'm grateful for my life. I appreciate the gift of my life and how life is living itself through me. That's a wonderful way to begin and end your day. Now, I welcome you to Take Back Your Mind, where we are seeking, with myself and my wonderful guests, to bring you into coherence with your potential, knowing that you're surrounded by infinite possibilities. We're training your mind to seek the highest possibility in every situation. Welcome to Take Back Your Mind. Our life question of the week today comes from Lori from Brooklyn, New York. And she says this: as a black woman who's evolving into love consciousness, I like that already. As a black woman who is evolving into a love consciousness, I find that I no longer want to talk about issues of race from a place of anger and separation. I understand wanting white people to take some responsibility for the inequity we see in society, but is it completely unacceptable for me to want to hold the space that hears their feelings and acknowledges their discomfort as human beings? Their reactions are apparently fear-based, and all of us are prone to react in fear. So I'm wondering, how can we move the needle if we all have finger-pointing and shaming? This is a great question. I'm wanting to get clear. Is it completely unacceptable for me to want to hold the space that hears their feelings and acknowledges their discomfort as human beings? I wonder if you're saying unacceptable for me not to want to hold the space, or you're saying unacceptable for me to hold the space. Regardless, let's go into the answer here. How can we move the needle if we all have finger pointing and shaming? Now, right there is your answer. It's impossible to move the needle into a love-based society, the beloved community, as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. would describe it, if there's finger pointing and blaming and shaming. First of all, as a black woman, as a black individual, as people of color, as we're evolving into love consciousness, we are removing ourselves from being victims of circumstance, situations, conditions, how people look at us, prejudice, things of that particular nature. We're moving into a state where we realize that our primary identity is the image and likeness of God. Our primary identity is a field of love and intelligence that carries the fullness. We're fully franchised expressions of all that the presence is. That's number one identity. Second identity is the temporary identities that we have here as our body temple. Masculine, feminine, male, female, black, white, Asian, brown people, whatever the temporary identities are. Every single identity has its own law, meaning how people look at us and how we look at ourselves based on the lens of that temporary identity. So first you rise to your ultimate identity. You are a luminous being. And then the temporary identities is the lamp shades. That is the identity through which the light shines through. If you overly identify with the temporary identity, then you end up incurring the particular laws that are about that identity. So one, you rise up. That's why you affirmatively and activatively pray and meditate to rise into your infinite potential. Then you shine the light through your temporary identities. So you no longer want to talk about the issues of race from a place of anger and separation. Good for you. These issues must be talked about with an open heart. They must be talked about with the awareness of walking in each other's shoes. So that individuals who have no understanding about what it is like to be a person of color or an African American must open up the heart to see from another point of view. This is what happened when George Floyd was assassinated publicly by a so-called police officer. So many people began to understand that that wasn't a one-off, that kind of activity has happened pretty regularly since slavery and the unfolding of our particular society. And people began to understand what it felt like to walk in the shoes of a person who had been oppressed for a period of time. Suddenly, people began to grow in compassion, kindness. People began to ask me, do people still call you the N-word in 2023? Yes, they do. You ever been in traffic jam? Anyway, the people began to understand what it means to walk in another person's shoes. In the same way, we all have to see that's the birth of compassion. When you're able to see things from another person's point of view, whether you agree with that point of view or not. If you're able to see, the Native Americans say, walk a mile in your brother or sister's moccasins. If you do that, you begin to open up and begin to see from another person's point of view. Now dialogue can begin to happen. I remember doing workshops a number of years ago in which I would have women in a circle with men on the outside of the circle. And the men couldn't say anything. All they had to do was listen to women talk to each other about what it was like to be a woman in a hyper-masculine society. And then the men got in the circle, the women were surrounding them, and they got to listen to how men felt walking with the burden of being a man, with all of the things that were plastered upon what it's supposed to mean to be a man in society. So at the end, we had big dialogue, and the women and the men began to see from each other's point of view, which developed dialogue. We should do the same thing we would have Jewish people in the middle of a circle and other people surrounding them. We'd have black people in the middle of the circle with white people surrounding them. And it birthed, oh, that's what it's like to be Jewish. That's what it's like to be Asian. That's what it's like to be a black person in America. It began to open up the possibility of dialogue, not from anger, not from shame, not from blame, not from finger pointing, but just from, wow, I didn't know that. Now, that's the beginning of dialogue. So your desire to not move into reaction, your desire to evolve into love consciousness does eliminate from you finger pointing and shaming to understanding and being aware that everybody's not going to understand you. Do you realize? I'm going to bring this to a close. This is a long, multifaceted question and many layers to it. Do you understand that it is just as harmful to take offense than it is to give offense? So if someone is offending you, that means that there is something within you that needs healing. So if someone is offensive, they're operating from fear and trauma. And then if you take offense, then that means there's something in you that's identifying with what they might be saying. So when individuals have called me out of my name, I'm deeply aware that they are sick and have been trained into hate, but they don't offend me. I just realize that they're ignorant. You understand? So anyway, I hope I'm touching on some of the aspects of your question because it has many layers to it. But if we are to build a kind and just global society, it begins with, as you said here, I'm evolving into a love consciousness. let's keep walking in that direction. Peace and blessings, Lori, and everyone else who gathered some kind of inspiration from this particular question. Have a beautiful day. Peace and blessings, everyone, and welcome to Take Back Your Mind. I'm the host, Michael B. Beckwith, and as you've become accustomed to seeing, I have wonderful guests on the program that, in their own way, have developed a genius in their particular area of their life to help you take back your mind. And that is, the mind oftentimes is curated by worry, doubt, fear, anxiousness, anxiety, polarization, a deep sense of separation that leads to poor choices, bad decision making. And so we want to take back our mind, come out of a victim consciousness, and realize that, when we expand our awareness about whatever it is we're talking about, we can make good choices for ourselves. We're not going to choose from fear. We're going to choose from real knowledge, real transformational knowledge, transformational information. Today, I have back with me again. He was my first guest, by the way, when I first began this a number of months ago. Here with Shawn Stevenson. This is more like family, his wife and his sons. We're cool like that. And so welcome back.
Oh, man, it's good to be back. I can't believe that I get to sit here with you still to this day.
I don't know why you don't believe it.
I mean, it's such an honor. It's such an honor. I was listening to you when I was in Ferguson, Missouri, didn't have two nickels to rub together. And, you've been such a guiding light. So this is really special.
Hey, man, I feel the same about you, man. Everywhere I go, I tell people about you, the Model Health Show. Certain people that I see out in the world, I say, man, you need to hook up with my man Shawn. He's got the information. In case you didn't catch that was episode number 2, by the way. The first episode I did by myself. The second episode, my first guest was Shawn Stevenson. It had to be that way. And if you didn't catch that episode, you don't know who he is. He's the author of the U.S. Today national bestseller, Eat Smarter, the international bestseller book, Sleep Smarter. He's the host and creator of the Model Health Show, featured as the #1 health podcast in the U.S., with millions of listeners, downloads each month. You hear that? As a graduate of the University of Missouri, St. Louis, Shawn studied business, biology, nutritional science, and became the co-founder of the Advanced Integrative Health Alliance. It's been featured in Forbes, Fast Company, the New York Times, Muscle and Fitness, ABC News, ESPN, and many other major media outlets. His new book is right here. It's called Eat Smarter, the Family Cookbook, the companion to his best-selling book, Eat Smarter, featuring 100 family-friendly recipes to boost your metabolism, up-level your energy, and start living a happier and healthier life. So we got eat, we got sleep, we got everything.
That's right. That's right.
And what I appreciate about your work, and this is what I tell folks, you actually do the deep research. It's not anecdotal. Yeah. It's like you go in and have these peer-reviewed research, Harvard, all these major universities. So, I'll say something, and I know I'm right. Then I check in with Shawn. Is this right? Yeah. He said, yeah, man, because that Harvard review, 19 something, they did a peer review. That's absolutely true. So when you hear Shawn speak, because a lot of times you see a lot of things on the internet, people just saying things that may or may not be true. When you hear Shawn speak, it's backed up by real science, not pseudoscience, but real science, real research. So I always appreciate that about you, man.
Thank you. It's an honor. I mean, this month is my 21st year working in health and fitness.
Wow.
It's so amazing. Like, time has kind of flown by in many ways. But, I started off into this field. Working at my university gym was my first step. Where I was working on my degree and studying biology, and really being able to have this really, really cool place to experiment and to study. Because being at a university, you've got people from all over the world.
Right.
And you can see these consistencies that cultures share, but then you can also see these differences and distinctions.
Right.
And trying to find those unifying pieces, but also eventually I'm very grateful, and this is part of this this new mission as well is like helping people to cater to their own personality and personalization. That's really the future
Right.
of wellness and medicine, because you're unique.
Right.
And we all have literally a unique metabolic fingerprint, a unique microbial fingerprint.
Right.
And so often we don't understand that we get to create our own microculture. We might exist in a larger culturescape,
Yeah.
which right now our culturescape isn't doing very well. And just actually, this was just published last year by the CDC. They've determined that right now, 60% of all American adults have at least one chronic disease.
Right.
At least one.
Right.
40% have two or more. And it's still
Wait a
trending
minute.
upwards.
60% have at least one.
At least one.
40% have more than one.
Exactly.
Yeah, so
that's where we
basically,
are right now.
we're saying that in this Western world that touts itself as the number one in so many things, it's basically one of the sickest nations in the world. That's what you just told me.
We're experiencing a paradox right now where we have all of this apparent innovation,
Yeah.
and yet we're the sickest and most disconnected we've ever been. And, right now, and this is one of the interesting things about this, we know what the causes of these outcomes are, but our attention keeps getting redirected to other things. And also, there's so much infighting about minutia. And what I mean by that is the Journal of the American Medical Association published this big analysis back in 2018, and they determined that poor diet is the number one cause of our epidemics of chronic disease. And by the way, when I said 60% have at least one chronic disease, that means the majority of our citizens are unwell.
Right.
Now, if you're well, if you're healthy and disease-free, you're not normal. That's the state that we're living in right now, And so we want to strive to be weird, but also most importantly, we want to shift this. We want to create that tipping point to normalize wellness again. Because knowing that poor diet is the number one cause, why are we so focused on all these other things? And also, it's not that these other things don't matter. Exercise, sleep quality.
Yes.
And also, we're going to talk about what's controlling our diet today as well. But even within all of that, to understand that, yes, we're dealing with this very sketchy situation right now, but there's so much opportunity to change.
Right.
And what I want to share for everybody, first and foremost, is that the reason that diet is so powerful, and kind of my bridge even into this field at this level, is that it's what's making up what we see when we see each other.
Right.
It's making up all the tissues of our heart, of our brain, of our gastrointestinal tract, everything about
You are what
us.
you eat, essentially,
You are what
for
you
real.
eat, literally.
Yeah.
You are what you eat, you are what you drink,
Think.
you are what you think, of course.
Yeah.
This is why we're on this show here.
Right.
And, you are what you breathe as
Right.
well. I can go down the line. We don't want to get caught in a silo. All these things matter, but there's something so remarkable about food is because we're taking something from the outside world and making it a part of our tissues.
Right.
It's a very intimate, powerful thing. And so, I'm really on a mission now to help give people the empowerment to shift the microculture. Because the macroculture is not doing well.
Right.
But, and you've heard this, we've said this 1,000 times, we're products of our environment.
Right.
And we are, if we're unaware.
Right.
Because we're also creators of our environment.
Right.
And so for years, I spent a lot of time and energy trying to target the macro environment, getting people to don't do this, don't go to that place,
Right.
But in a graceful way,
Yeah.
and encourage them to make behavior changes. But then I send them out when they leave my office to a culture that is fighting them in that change. Instead of helping to shift the culture, the microculture that they're going back to. So this is when I started to work with families.
Yes.
That's when I started to work with entire organizations. And that's when you see sustainable change, because now the microculture makes the healthy behavior automatic.
Right.
Instead of making it hard.
Right.
And so that's
So
really
you're
the
talking
mission.
about habits.
Yeah.
You're talking about changing people's habits. You've said a lot. First of all, I want to go back to this point about our uniqueness and that one size doesn't fit all. And so you're really assisting people to discover what works for them. Like a diet for somebody may not be good for someone else based on their culture, based on where they live, based on how they've grown up. And so we don't want to just slap something on the wall and say, this works for everybody. Yeah. So people have to begin to discover, as you're assisting them to do, that there's something that works for us uniquely and individually. It's powerful. Now, one of the things that you really talk about too is how people eat, whether they're eating with their families, whether they're eating on the run. There's a whole social dynamic, as well as the food we're eating, but also how are we eating it? What environment are we eating the food in? This is also, you also bring this out in your book.
Yeah, this is the ultimate controller. And I searched around, I jumped around in the research and in my own practice as well, and teaching. Again, I've been in this field for 21 years. But the most important thing was staring me right in my face the entire time. And one of the studies that I highlight in this new book, it's a huge meta-analysis. This was published by the researchers at Brigham Young University. And meta-analysis is multiple studies, but this wasn't just a few. This was 148 studies.
148
and
studies.
300,000 study participants. This is a huge
Oh,
data
this wasn't
set.
like 10 people.
This was a lot.
Yeah.
And they uncovered that having healthy social bonds, having healthy relationships led to a 50% reduction in all-cause mortality. Right? So what that means is a 50% reduction in early death from everything when people had healthy relationships. There was something remarkable. And the researchers indicated this was more determinant on our health outcomes than beating obesity, than smoking, than anything else you could name. It was relationships. And I was just like, this is nuts. And within a short period of time of coming across that study, and when I was working on this book, now I get introduced to this professor of psychiatry at Harvard, who's the director of the longest running longitudinal study on human longevity. And longitudinal means they're following people for years. They're following them. And his research, he was the fourth director to get this baton passed. He was like the anchor leg in this, because it's been running for 80 years. Their research indicates the number one determinant on how long you're going to live is the quality of your relationships.
You know, I agree with that. I mean, obviously it's real. I saw something about, I don't know if it's the same study, but they were studying people who lived to be 100 and more. And they were asking them, you know, about their life. And these people said something similar, that every day they woke up and they felt connected and needed by their family. That they had a reason to wake up the next day. They had grandkids, they had great-grandkids, they had family. They wanted to associate with them. They wanted to assist in some way, shape, form. They were needed as well. And they just kept living. There was no, I want to get out of the body. You know, it was like, I love being here and I got this broad, beautiful family. This is what you're saying in substance.
It's a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
It's a sense of significance.
Yeah.
Right? And these are deep human needs. And now, again, all of those, that's wonderful. We can have a sense of purpose that's something else.
Right.
But there's something about relationships that really help to activate that in people. And so here's where it all comes together. Our relationships are, according to the research, and also if we pay attention to our lives, the biggest determining factor on our diet, on our exercise habits, on our spiritual practices and community. Our relationships determine so much about our happiness, our success.
Right.
It's the tip of the spear.
Right.
That's why it's so powerful in the data, is that our relationships are affecting how we live our lives deeply.
Yeah.
And if we're honest, good relationships make life a lot better.
Yeah.
But when they're messed up, everything can go bad really quickly.
The whole cascade of toxic chemicals start flowing through the temple.
Yeah.
You know, you said something about, you know, when you went out into the macro, you know, don't do this, don't do that, but you realize you were throwing people out into a weird environment. You know, that's what happened for me to start Agape. I was doing workshops, you know, way before they were really popular, years ago, standing room only. And I remember sitting in my living room one day, and we were graduating another group of people, and I felt a little bit of sadness. I didn't understand what the sadness was. And then it caught me. These people are going to go back out into a society that doesn't understand these 5 to 10 weeks of training I just gave them. They're going to go right back out to the same families, the same churches, and that began this movement to actually start a community that would actually support what they were learning in the classes, so they could actually be in a community of people who are on the edge of discovering who they are, developing the habits about growth, development, and unfoldment. Yeah. It was very similar to what you're saying. You know, the larger environment wasn't supporting these teachers. This is 40 years ago. Yeah. This stuff was weird back then.
Yeah.
You know, now it's, you know, it's all over. But back then it was like, oh, it was weird. You know, what do you mean your thoughts create your reality? What does it mean, law of attraction, all that stuff, you know? But it's a very similar dynamic, you know. Now,
let me
go ahead.
Cut in here, because that is speaking to, again, now, it's not that we need to have that. Yeah. There are people who have that sheer will,
Right.
that will persevere in the most tumultuous environments.
Right.
There are people that can do that.
Well, we're sitting here because of certain
Exactly.
people who did that.
Exactly. Now,
Yeah.
with that being said, it is incredibly difficult. It is so difficult that many people will forfeit. They will give up.
Right.
They will give in. And that's the thing is, we tend to bash those people for not being strong enough or not having the will. When in reality, again, it's incredibly difficult. We put ourselves through so much suffering.
Yeah.
Oftentimes when we get these insights and then we're living in an environment that is fighting against it.
Right.
And so it's not that it's impossible. It's just we can make it easier. We can make it normal to do these things. And let's tie this in with food.
Absolutely.
One of the things that we've been doing together as a species for thousands of years is eating together.
Right.
But here's the thing, it's even deeper than that. When we were living in tribes, all of the process, it was a community process.
Right.
Hunting, gathering, food preparation, eating together, celebration. We just got back from Hawaii from the first time. And every time I think of Hawaii, by the way, I think of Magnum PI, my grandmother.
She liked that. Huh?
She did. That was her time. That was her one time. I have to find something else to do because grandma was watching Magnum PI. But anyways, and we see this dramatization of something called a luau.
Right.
We sit back and watch it as a show.
Right.
But that's how things were. As I'm watching, I'm just like, this is incredible.
That was culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, the hunting. They bring in the food out. The food is prepared. We all dine together, celebrate, dance, sing, communicate, storytelling. All these things would happen under that umbrella. And over time, especially the last few decades, really the last century, our tribes have been more and more fractured. Because even when we start to have our neighborhoods, we'd still be near family oftentimes. But now it's not just that we have our nuclear family that's usually tends to be the small, mother, father, parents, whatever those parents' construct are, and children. And even within that now, we're even more divided in the household because of our technology.
Right.
And so we're getting further and further away from each other. And my question was there something about eating together that was protective of our health that we're missing out on? And that's what led me to some of the craziest data. And it just made sense. Again, it's one of those things where but also here's another thing about me with research is I'm also looking for the thing that is counter to what I believe.
Right. You have
because
to go
I have to have a balanced perspective.
Right.
Because I have to be open to us eating in front of a screen for the rest of our lives, unlocking some kind of superpower.
Right.
Who knows? But what the data indicates is, and this was a big analysis done by some researchers at Harvard, they found that families who eat together on a consistent basis, those family members consume significantly higher amounts of real foods, fruits and vegetables, and by nature, tremendously more essential nutrients that prevent diseases. And
Just eating together.
And significantly less ultra-processed foods. And
That's
so
important.
dangerous chemicals as well.
Yeah.
And then we stretched that out because after I found that, I was like, how is this not up on billboards, just eating together? And we'll talk about why, by the way, which is really important. And also the barrier potentially. And so there's two studies. One was published in the journal Pediatrics that's looking at children. The other was published in the journal JAMA, Journal of the American Medical Association. These researchers found that because I'm also always asking, what's the minimum effective dose? How little can people do to get the benefit? Because I know, and you know this, people want change, but they don't want to change that much. Right.
So, I like that. They want change, but they don't want to change.
Yes, exactly. They want to bring their old self to the new party. I want these results.
It's not going to happen.
But I don't want to change.
Right. I want to get stronger, but I don't feel like working out.
just let me get the muscles up off.
Right.
And so I was looking at, again, what's that minimum effective dose? And these researchers uncovered that it's three meals a week with people that you love, friends and family.
Just 3 meals.
3 meals a week.
In that 7-day week?
Yeah. 3 meals a week out of 7-day week. 3 meals a week led to significantly reduced incidence of those children developing obesity and disordered eating. Plummeted when kids were eating with their family 3 times a week. For parents, there was a great study looking at office workers from IBM and tracking their getting home and having family dinner and their work morale, productivity, stress. They found that when they were able to make it home for family dinners, work morale stayed high, productivity stayed high, and their stress levels stayed negligible. But as soon as things started cutting into their ability to have dinner with their families, stress went up, work productivity plummeted, and also work morale went down. And so why does this matter? And I shared everything that we're going over, by the way, is all in the Eat Smarter Family Cookbook.
Yes.
And why does this matter? Another study published in JAMA. And JAMA is one of the most prestigious journals, especially coming from the U.S.
Right.
Journal of the American Medical Association.
They're not bought and sold at this point by anybody.
Yeah, they do a lot of good work. It's more balanced. It's not that everything is good that's published there, but they do a much better job.
Right.
The BMJ, has really done a great job. And so what they found was that 60 to 80% of all doctor visits today are for stress-related diseases.
Right.
Okay? So we're not educated about this because stress is, in many ways, it's invisible.
Right.
It doesn't have calories.
Right.
It doesn't have any, preservatives.
It pulls on your mind and your heart, your soul. Yeah.
It's because our thoughts create chemistry.
Right.
It alters our chemistry. And so getting home and having dinner with their family was creating this incredible buffer against stress. And the question is why? Let's dig into why.
Please.
So number one, when we're in the space with people that we care about, we're very good. We start basically producing a chemical cocktail of good stuff. And one of the main things being oxytocin.
Yeah.
Right. So oxytocin starts getting produced, and oxytocin it's got a couple of nicknames. One of them is the love hormone.
Absolutely.
And it's one of the few hormones that we've identified that literally counteracts the activity of cortisol. All right. This glorified stress hormone, which cortisol isn't bad. We need cortisol to get up and go.
Yeah.
But when it's running the show, that's when it can be problematic. And for a lot of people, they can go 0 to 100 real quick.
Right.
But they're very challenged in going from 100 to 0.
Right.
Oxytocin helps to switch over from that fight or flight, sympathetic, go, to the parasympathetic, rest and digest nervous system. And that's all, again, when we are able to have this dinner table as a unifier. It doesn't have to be dinner, by the way.
Right. It could be lunch.
Any meals.
Yeah.
But it's a unifier. So that's number one. It's helping us to switch over to the parasympathetic nervous system. It's like magical in doing that. And it's because it's an epigenetic controller. And so that's number one.
Break that down, though. I know what epigenetics means, but when you say it's an epigenetic controller, what are you saying?
Absolutely. So, of course, I know you know Bruce Lipton.
Yeah, that's my boy.
And
we both know him very well.
He's been a great mentor. And, I have these wonderful conversations with him. And he's always directed me back to the mind, even because there's entire fields now of nutrigenomics, nutrigenetics, looking at how food alters our gene expression, right? But he's always like, mine's first, mine's first.
Everything else is second, absolutely.
So what we know today, which in my university education, we were taught, it's DNA to RNA to protein, right? Our genes are controlling what's getting printed. That's the end of the story.
Yeah,
that's what's
Dawkins, you're basically dancing to your genes. That's it.
Your genes control your life.
Yeah, that's the old science.
Today we know, and there's a wonderful study that was published recently, is another big meta-analysis looking at many of the major killers in the United States. And they found that, basically the title of the study, and if we were watching on the video, maybe we could put the study up for people to see, is that genes are not the major causative factor of our disease epidemics.
Right.
All right. It's something else, and it's epigenetics, which epigenetics are above genetic control. So it's kind of like our epidermis, right? It's the above the dermis. And so our epigenome or epigenetics are determining how our genes are getting expressed. This is what makes us so different, because we might have collectively 20,000 genes we're sharing as a species. Bananas can have more.
Right.
So when they did the Human Genome Project, they're like, we've got 1 million genes, I'm sure.
Right.
No. What's different about us is all the variation in how things can get expressed.
Right.
That's what makes us so unique and so special as a species. Now, let me add this little tidbit in here that Bruce probably didn't add for you yet, which is now we understand that most of the genes that we're carrying, if we go gene for gene, most of our genes are bacterial. Upwards of about 99% of our genes that we're carrying are bacterial genes.
Right.
And now we're looking at the interface between our bacteria genes and our genes.
Right.
Right. And now, again, it's just like creating even more variety and diversity in our outcomes. Because one of the things Bruce shared with me was, what we label to be diseases, we don't have genes that code for diseases. There are let me put it like this. There are very, very few true genetic defects. Most of the time, these alterations, when we see an outcome, like, for instance, manifestation of type 2 diabetes.
Right.
It's an alteration. It's not the gene made this
Right.
faulty.
Right.
It's an
We're not
alteration.
wired for that.
Exactly. We're
Right.
not wired for that. It's an adaptation
Right.
that the body is making under unideal circumstances to keep you alive.
Right. That's like arthritis too. Same thing. It's a protection against something trying to get in your system, so it would create a buffer that we call a disease.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we
I
get
like
mad
this.
at the symptom.
Right.
Right. But we don't understand that our body is making this adaptation to protect us in some way. And there's going to be a hierarchy. And also because of our unique gene makeup and how things are getting read, it's going to be a different expression. There are no two people that have the same arthritis. There are no two people that have the same
Cancer.
diabetes, same cancer.
Right.
Everything is unique, but we have this blanket system.
Right.
We come in like, was that Linus in the Peanuts with the blanket? We come in with this dirty blanket.
Right.
And we throw it over you and give you this label.
Right.
And now this is your identity.
Right.
You're a diabetic and there's nothing you can do about it.
Right.
This is who you
take
are.
medicine the rest of your life.
Yeah. But now we know, of course, there's so much. And most importantly, of course, like removing the cause. Let's address the root cause of this dysfunction. And that's really even going back to when I was advocating for behavior change with people, when I was, doing my clinical work. That's kind of like treating the symptom in many ways. I'm not addressing the root cause, which is the culture. And so to tie all this together, so that switch over, we've got parasympathetic activation when we're around each other. We've got oxytocin being this kind of dominant hormone and other chemistry as well. Deactivation of things like cortisol, adrenaline. But also one of the reasons that this is so effective is that simply knowing today, we got all this stuff going on, that we're having family dinner on Monday and Wednesdays, it incites this awareness that that's coming, and also it incites planning. So we're naturally going to start to, because when we're thinking family dinner, we're going to have a construction in our mind. It's going to, even unconsciously, to make an actual meal. Now, here's the thing too about this project and this work, we got to have grace with ourselves as well. But I do want to advocate for people today, pick those 3 days and schedule it, because we schedule things that are far less important.
Right.
This is so vital as a protection for your kids, for yourself.
That's beautiful.
And
tell them that, because I think that's powerful.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
When I would ask,
that's how it used to be back in the day. I mean, when I came home from school, I knew mom was going to have dinner. We were all going to sit around the table. I can see my father sitting there, my mother sitting there, my brother's over there, and I can see it right now.
Yeah.
That was every night. Then on weekends we may have done something a little different.
Yeah.
But it was like, what's for dinner, Mom?
Yeah. And this is the other beautiful part about this. You just said exactly, I can see. This is what is so powerful about it, is that you can see your loved ones. You can see your children.
Right.
And this is an opportunity to get some real FaceTime.
Yeah.
Right?
The real FaceTime.
Real FaceTime, because a lot of our communication is physical. A lot of our communication is nonverbal.
Yeah.
And so we can pick up subtleties with our kids to find out their state, to find out what they might be struggling with. We can't see it if we're not paying attention.
Right.
And that dinner table being a unifier, we get to actually be present and to catch things early. Plus being able to offload ourselves, to be able to let go of some of the stressors by just speaking about things tends to release. And so also I've integrated this into our family culture with myself, because a lot of people grew up like this, but there wasn't really a soft moment with the men in my life, right? And so my sons can tend to pick up that nothing hurts me, right? That I'm Superman,
Right.
I'm good, Dad's good.
Right.
And so having it where we can go around the table, we've had many meals together.
Right,
we'll go around and share, what we're grateful for. But also sometimes we go around the table and share what we failed at today.
Right.
What did you struggle with today?
Right.
Everybody go ahead, we'll go around and we'll share. And so they get to hear, oh, you struggle with something?
Right.
And so it's like opening up a new door of
That's
compassion.
So true. That's so true.
Of empathy, right? And these things get embedded and they carry on to their family, because that's what culture really is, by the way. It's defined that culture is the shared values, attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors that are passed from one generation to the next.
Yeah, you're bringing up a lot of memory because I can remember obviously sitting at the dinner table with my dad and mom, and my dad would teach us things like, don't believe everything you read in the newspaper. We got that at the dinner table because my brother would say something sometimes, and my father would say, well, how do you know that's true? And my brother would say, well, I read about it. He says, how do you know that's an opinion or a fact? So he would break that down to us.
Yeah. That's before the internet.
Before the internet. Now we really have to do it.
Yeah.
And something else that he did. I remember one other time I was a little kid, and we asked my father something, and he said, I don't know. That was a shock to me as a little kid. Dad doesn't know? What? Mm-hmm. But it's like what you were saying, the vulnerability around the dinner table.
Humanized.
Yeah, it says, I don't know the answer to that. When if you find out, please let me know.
Yeah.
That kind of empowered me.
And that's okay.
Like Dad doesn't know this. I'm going to find out the answer to this. Yeah. So you also deal with in this book like smarter strategies for shopping. You go into that as well. Mm-hmm. That's break that down a little bit because people think they need to be like have a whole lot of money to get what you need.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not even about that.
As you know, I made this transformation. I was living in poverty in Ferguson. I grew up in poverty.
Right.
And I always like the caveat, poverty in the United States is different from other places in the world.
Right.
Because you still probably have a TV. Right. We had a video game system. We might get it a year later. It wasn't this Christmas, but next Christmas.
Even the shoes might be a year later too, That's
right, yeah. Oh, I didn't even know what Jordans were. Yeah. I didn't know. We was at Payless but I was pumped to get these particular, and we got food from charities, literally. There's this place called the Hosea House that we would get charity, food from charities. I would go on charity trips, for Christmas. They would give us gifts. We oftentimes, we couldn't afford gifts.
Right.
And, but also, of course, government assistance, WIC and food stamps and all the like. That's the reality that I was in. And, but again, even with poverty, we're on the bus a lot, that kind of stuff. But my mom was getting cars from this place, this true story, called OK Junk Cars.
OK Junk Cars.
Yeah. And she kept getting a Ford Escort. Like whenever they get one in, this one break down, she re-up on the Escort. I guess it was escorting to the next one. But, so these are the conditions that I grew up in. And with all of that said, most of the food that we were getting was ultra-processed food.
Right.
All right. And we know that that's the majority of money that's going out with government assistance today is for ultra-processed foods. And this is the culture we're existing in right now, which is 60% of the average adult diet in the United States, according to the BMJ, is ultra-processed foods. Mm. All right. So this is not...
It's not food, real food. Actually.
Processing food is something humans have been doing forever. Cooking it is a process. Mm-hmm. Pressing the oil out of olives is a process.
Right.
All right. We're talking about ultra-processed foods where we have a field of wheat that somehow becomes a bowl of Fruity Pebbles, right? It's so disconnected from anything real, not to mention all of the synthetic ingredients, food dyes, all this synthetic chemistry, insecticides and pesticides, all this stuff. Mm. And so that's ultra-processed foods. That was the majority of my diet growing up because it's worse for kids. This is the first book publishing this new study. I'm honored to say it, but this is a call to action too. And looking at the diet of children in the United States. This was published in JAMA as well. They looked at U.S. children's food intake for about 20 years, kids 2 to 19. They found that the average child in the United States back in 1999, their diet was 61% ultra-processed foods. By 2018, it was almost 70% ultra-processed food. We're making our tissues, our kids' tissues, out of fake foods. So I'm saying all this to say that growing up in that environment, I'm surrounded by ultra-processed foods. That's all I'm aware of. That's part of this is awareness, because once I knew better, I could do better.
Right.
Absolutely. And accessibility. That's another one of the objections that people would have, who oftentimes don't come from where I come from, saying, well, you have access, or, most people aren't privileged to be able to have dinner with their families,
right,
or to be able to afford healthier food.
Right.
Let me tell you how I did it, because I did it.
Yes. Without being rich.
Oh man, far from it.
Yeah.
Far from it. Some of the many times I'd be at the cash register like,
do I have enough?
I hope this goes through. I'm ready to you put that back. Whatever. And so a couple of things. First of all, I'm talking with you, so I got to talk the real.
Come on.
We're so powerful.
Yeah.
We are far more powerful than we give ourselves credit for.
Absolutely.
And even if we know, we forget.
Right.
Right. And so it's that practicing this and understanding there isn't any barrier that can stop you but you. Truly.
Yeah, that's true. That begins with the mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so making that decision to, like for me, I made it a mandate. I eat the best food ever. That's my goal. I eat the best food ever. And even though I didn't have very much money, really incredible things started to happen. By me making a decision to get well, living in Ferguson, surrounded by all of this, volatility. And, when I walk out my apartment complex, it's a liquor store right there, foods, shelves lined with ultra processed foods, every fast food that you can name around me. Suddenly, when I make this decision, I find out for years, there's been a farmer's market 5 minutes away.
I had the same experience.
In the quote, good part of Ferguson.
Yeah.
Right next to the police station, which, I wasn't trying.
It's quite interesting. You didn't want to get too close to that. But,
but that was there. And now I'm paying sometimes half of the amount that I'd be paying at a place like Whole Foods. And by the way, I'm from St. Louis.
Right.
This year, again, it's the highest murder rate in the United States. All right. This is a big city. I'm trying to reference it's a big city, and there's also a lot of volatility.
Yeah.
And I come from the center of that.
Right.
And understanding how big the city is, and this is true story. There was one Whole Foods in this entire big city. And here in LA, you can throw a rock any direction and hit a Whole Foods.
There's a few of them.
It's more accessible.
Erewhon, Whole Foods,
you name
Trader
it.
Joe's.
Not to mention all the mom and pop ones,
Yeah.
But this just wasn't something that was around. So I had to go outside my environment to get to that place. But I didn't know Whole Foods existed until I made the decision.
Yeah, that opened you up.
That's
what happened to me. I was driving down the street. I decided I'm going to eat healthy food. And all of a sudden I see this pink building on Crenshaw Boulevard. I said, what's that? I pull in, it was Lindbergh's. Have you ever heard of Lindbergh's? Okay, it was one of the first nutritional health food years ago. We're talking back in the early 70s. So I walked in there and I saw all these vitamins and all these different kind of wonderful food, supplements. And I said, how long you guys been? And they said, 20 years. I said, well, I've been driving down that street. Yeah. Well, before I could drive, I was taking the bus.
Yeah.
That had been there 20 years. I'd never even seen it. And it's pink, big pink building. I never even noticed it. I noticed Fat Burger.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? The double chili cheese with bacon on top. But I never noticed this place until, like you said, I made a choice and a decision that I was going to eat better. And all of a sudden, I noticed it.
Our focus depends on our filter.
Absolutely.
We see what we filter for.
Right.
And so there was one Wild Oats as well, which has since been bought up by Whole Foods. But that was my first time seeing a store that was dedicated to health.
Right.
And it was a friend of mine. I'd known her for maybe 3 years. I see her off and on for years.
Right.
But now, this was in like a week and a half of me making this decision to get well. Mm-hmm. She takes me to Wild Oats.
Right.
Like, I didn't know where we was going, but we ended up there, and I walk into this place, and I'm just like, what is this? They got grass, wheat grass sitting on the counter. I'm like, why is there grass in here? And but I went right to the reference section. They had these great books. And I saw all of these like published studies on, at the time, because I had really low bone density. I broke my hip, as you know, at track practice.
Right.
And I had this.
You were your own guinea pig in terms of nutrition and supplementation. Yeah.
And I had this arthritic condition of my spine, essentially, degenerative disc disease, which was so severe that the physician, when I was 20, said I had the spine of an 80-year-old at the time, which that's even a disrespect, by the way.
For 80-year-olds.
Because, right, exactly. There's some 80-year-olds who are killing it.
Right.
And but basically my discs were so degenerated that you couldn't see the light shine through them on the MRI. And also 2 of them were herniated. And so, but let me just jump to the end of that, which was after making this decision to get well, 9 months later and getting a scan done, those 2 herniations had healed on their own and the disc had regenerated. So now I could see the light shining through it. And really at that point I had already transformed my health so much, but I went back for that affirmation from the same
prove it
system.
to yourself. Yeah.
I remember the doctor, he was looking at it with me. He was like, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Mm-hmm. Why you ask me about because I told him, I was like, I really focused on changing what I was eating and exercising. It just like flew over his head.
That was not the model we had come from.
And so, but to hammer these points down with how do we save money? Number one,
Grocery shopping, yeah.
Yeah.
What's smart grocery shopping?
So let's first and foremost, if we can get access to a farmer's market, just even go into Dr. Google, look in your local area, farmer's
Dr.
markets. This is an opportunity to find foods that are oftentimes less expensive, much higher quality, and the nutrient density also helps to address, it's called the ARN in our brain, appetite regulating network. And so we're more satisfied and we're not eating a lot of other stuff. And so we're actually getting more from the food that we're eating. So that's number one, if we can access a farmer's market. They're wonderful CSAs, right? So
CSA.
so this is like community gardens.
Okay, yeah.
They're going to give you, but with the thing with CSAs are, you don't get to necessarily pick what they give you. Basically get a box of variety of fruits and vegetables and things like that delivered to your house, or you pick it up. But you could save a ton of money, just Googling CSAs, food in your area. But another thing was at the grocery store itself. So when I go to Whole Foods, which unfortunately many of those foods are more expensive, and we'll talk about why in just a second, what I would do is I would start to look for those yellow signs. Whatever's on sale is what I'm going to eat. All right. So I would use that and then also stock up.
Yeah.
So if, avocados were on sale, I'd stock up. And the question is like, what do you do? Because avocados are, they got an attitude problem sometimes.
Yeah,
right?
they want to go bad on you.
They can go from delicious or not ripe at all to like that,
brown.
Yeah, to zombie status really quickly. And so here's a couple of real quick strategies with avocados, which I feel like I've mastered. So right before it gets ripe, or even when they get ripe and you're just like, what am I going to do with these? Put in the fridge. It will slow that process down by about 3 days. And another option that we can do, especially when you got a bunch that are ripe at the same time, you can cut them up and freeze them. Cut them up, put them in the chunks, put them in the freezer. You can make smoothies and things like that with those avocados.
That's exactly what I do. That's exactly my strategy. Especially if they're on sale.
Yeah.
I'll buy a few, keep some of them out. As soon as they start to get a little soft, they go in the refrigerator. I freeze the rest.
Yeah.
That's my smoothie deal.
Yeah.
I got my avocado, I got my blueberries, I got whatever other fruit I want to put in there, and then my superfood greens and my protein powder. I'm good.
Yeah.
That's what I had before I came here to see you.
No doubt. It's amazing. We pick these things up along the way, but so many times I had to suffer. I'm taking my avocados from the counter to the trash. Like I spent all this money. Same thing with people get the spring mix, before you know it, you're this kind of, aspirational purchases, right? And we end up throwing food away. So I shared a bunch of strategies like that in the book, by the way.
This is Eat Smart. Let me just say this. I want you to get this book. Shawn Stevenson has Eat Smarter, Family Cookbook. But, I've gone through it. It's more than just a cookbook. It's a cookbook. It's a beautiful cookbook. But he's got all kinds of information. The stuff we're talking about, it's all in his book. He's got studies, research. He's got all kinds of ways by which you can become a better you by eating smarter. So what you're hearing us talk about, it's in the book. So get the book. Yeah. And you have this, but this also is a compendium to another book.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So I'm so honored to say this again, coming from where I come from.
Yeah.
When Eat Smarter came out, it was the #1 new release in the United States of all books.
Right.
And it ended up being a USA Today national bestseller, all the good things, but the mission was not done.
Right.
Job not finished.
Right.
And what I was most surprised about, because there is a section that has different recipes, but it was more so it's a big idea book,
right,
an education book. I was shocked at how many people were sharing the meals, like cooking the food and making it and posting their food pictures and videos and things like that. I'm like, I put 5% of my energy into that part, but because we live in this visual culture, that's what people, and also there's something so intimate about eating, that's cool, learning this stuff, but when you eat something, you have this experience. And so the last part I want to make sure that we emphasize is why these foods are more expensive.
Please, you were going to break that down.
Okay. So the #1 reason why I can go to, when I was living in Ferguson, go to Jack in the Box, get 2 for 99-cent tacos.
You can still do that now, man.
I don't know what the
I haven't been there in years. Well,
I don't know what the game is out there.
But
with
they make
Jack
it
in the
very
Box.
inexpensive for all those places. I used to call it back in the day, I would call it death row. That was the real death row. All those fast food places lined
Sugar
up.
night.
Yeah.
Sugar night.
I remember one guy came running up to me and saying, "Don't say that. You have a member of Agape that owns McDonald's." Don't. I said, "I really
Hey,
can't help it."
It is what it is. It is what it
can't
is.
help it. It's that death row. The pharmaceutical companies are like, well, because you had talked about how sick we are. They already know the diseases that we're going to have 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. They've already got this pharmaceutical remedy. They already know, so we don't have to play into that.
They're counting on it.
Yeah, they're counting on it. Keep eating your sugar pops and all that stuff. We got you. We waiting. Go ahead. Yeah.
And, that's another thing with that system. It's designed to create repeat customers.
Yeah.
Right? Not get well.
Yeah.
Not remove the cause, but, making basically factory farming humans.
Right.
And so the number one reason why, you can get these $2 for $2 cheeseburgers, 2 for 99-cent tacos, those products are very cost intensive to make.
Right.
There's a lot of different ingredients. There's a lot of processing, the packaging, the marketing. An avocado, literally, I went for a walk. California is different. There's food falling off the trees, all right? I'm just walking, just like, damn, it's all these oranges. Like,
right.
This is crazy.
We used to go pick them out in the valley back in the day.
Listen, that food, but I'm saying it literally falls off the tree.
Right.
There's none of that work is involved.
Right.
Why is that $3 for that avocado? And I can get 6 tacos for that same amount.
Right.
What is a family going to do? My mother would go and buy those tacos.
Right.
To, quote, fill up her kids.
Right.
She's doing that because it's cheap.
Right.
It's
quick.
Obviously tasty, designed that way by food scientists. And the marketing put that right in our face. Mm-hmm. The question is, why is it so inexpensive? It's because of government subsidies.
Absolutely. Break it down, brother.
So what we're looking at is a situation where we have nearly $200 billion. I shared one of these studies in my earlier book, and nearly $200 billion just in a recent 20-year time span in the U.S. $200 billion was put into government subsidies for foods that largely end up coming through the drive-through window.
Right.
That end up in ultra-processed
We're paying
foods.
for that with our taxpayer money.
When
Stuff we're not even eating.
Yeah.
We're paying for that to be cheap. That wheat or that soy or whatever it is that they're growing, we're paying for that. And then the fast food companies are benefiting financially from my taxpayer dollars.
Yeah.
It's an interesting business model.
Yeah. And you just said it, because also whenever we say government, that means us.
Right.
It means our money.
My money
is being
taken out of my check.
Sent to do that.
Yeah.
And I also shared this analysis where they were looking at people who are consuming the most government subsidized foods, and most of those being genetically modified dwarf wheat, corn, which is getting used in all manner. Again, this can manifest into Funyuns or Captain Crunch, whatever the case might be. And obviously a big sweetener, huge sweetener industry.
Corn syrup, right.
Soy, canola, the list goes on and on. But basically foods that are used to make ultra-processed foods.
Right.
And they were looking at, and this was published in JAMA as well, shout out to Journal of the American Medical Association. They were looking at consumption of government subsidized foods, and they found that people who had the highest intake of government subsidized foods had about a 30% greater incidence of being obese, higher rates of inflammatory biomarkers, things like C-reactive protein that are leaning towards you're going to have a cardiovascular event. All of these very, very troubling and disturbing, terrible health outcomes were happening when people were eating government subsidized food. So literally we're paying for the problem.
Right.
We're funding sickness.
Right.
And that's the culture that we're existing in right now. And so just to put a cherry on top of some strategies with shopping. So we mentioned farmers markets, CSAs, shopping, paying attention to what's on sale, and stocking up on certain things based on that. And another thing, and this is kind of just a practical thing, is minimizing food waste, which we talked about a little bit. You'd be shocked, about 40% of all food is wasted.
Right.
It's a huge global problem. We could feed everybody in the world.
You can feed everybody with that. You can also feed everybody with the amount of food that is being stored, not even being let out onto the market, because that would lower the price, and then thrown away. I mean, there are people that don't have any food that could eat that food. but we keep it off the market so that we keep the price up. Yeah. So we live in an interesting world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, again, these are just a few of the practical things that are shared in the book, because we also talk about how to transform your kitchen culture to make all this more fun and inviting. Earlier, when you shared that you had that moment of sadness when you, prior to Agape being founded, because you knew, I immediately thought about this moment of sadness in writing this book when I was thinking about my youngest son in particular, when he used to come, man, it's crazy. It's tough. He used to come into the kitchen and, I'm kind of full steam ahead. A lot of times, again, because we're busy, he's got school in the morning, and he would come into the kitchen and ask if he could help.
If he could help.
And how many times I told him, not today, bud. Not today.
Right.
And kind of send him on his way. And I was missing on those opportunities.
Right.
And thankfully, I caught myself, this was a couple of years ago. Now, Braden,
come on in.
He can cook himself. And
Right.
he's just turned 12. And I also, all of my kids and even my parents, wonderful cooks. We're big time foodies.
I know. Right? I've been to the house.
You know how we do.
I mean, your wife makes a broccoli that's just ridiculous.
Even making broccoli taste.
She makes it taste like it's I don't even know how to describe it. We be talking about Anne's broccoli.
Yeah, and of course my mother-in-law, my Mukami, and cooking traditional
Kenyan
Kenyan food.
Oh yeah, that's great.
All the
When's
things.
she coming back in town?
For the holidays are coming up, she'll be here. We're gonna fly her in for sure. That's her love language too.
Yeah.
But this is another thing. How do we equip our children with these valuable life skills? That another sobering stat in the book is how the capacity to be able to cook food for oneself in the most recent generations, it's on the endangered species list. A lot of kids can't cook for themselves.
Yeah, you are bringing up something. Two things before we go. One, a few months ago, going back to cooking together, I wanted to have, what did I want to have? Some potato soup, a whole lot of vegetables in it. So I started putting it together. All of a sudden, my daughter comes in and she starts helping. My son comes over. He starts throwing down the kitchen. Then my grandson comes in, and all four of us are in the kitchen, basically cooking this meal. And then we did it a few more times. It was like their mother, my kid's mother, had passed over. So there was like, it was like a little sadness in the house, And but we started cooking, and it created whole new memories of us cooking together. Yeah. And it became a part of this dynamic. Now my grandson's off at Howard University. He's not there at the house right now. But I just remember exactly what you're saying. It just became a dynamic in the kitchen. I didn't ask them to help. I was ready. I was going to do it all. My daughter comes cutting up the potatoes. She starts putting the spices in the thing. Yeah. My son's coming in. It was just like a good moment for me. Yeah. And it was like, wow, this is a beautiful memory. The other thing is, I know you have something in your book about what they're cooking on. What kind of pots and pans are they cooking the food on? Because you might be doing good nutritional food, but you might be putting some toxicity in the food.
Yeah, perfluorooctanoic acid. That's one of the compounds that's banned recently, is in Teflon.
Right.
And I remember, the nonstick cookware was a vibe. It's what everybody had, and it makes things easier in many aspects. But little did we know that we were poisoning our population. And again, this chemical is banned. It's banned. It's been banned for about 10 years. But even when most people have their blood tested, they're still finding it in their blood.
It's not
a decade later,
because
it's in this category of forever chemicals.
Wow.
And what specifically why it was pulled is that it was found to be a notable renal carcinogen, meaning it causes kidney cancer. All right, and this we're literally cooking this, and we're absorbing it into our bodies. And so the thing is, this is still, these products, even though that chemical is taken out, there are many other unsavory compounds, and these companies are going to just keep selling their stuff until they're forced to change. And oftentimes it's decades later.
And they don't even use it themselves many times, the people that are producing
especially
it.
If they know. If they know. But so we talk about what are some higher quality options. And also, by the way, with all of this, we're operating with some grace here, because I didn't change all this stuff overnight.
Right.
Just encouraging a couple of swaps here or there. You don't have to change out all your pots and pans. Maybe just get one, if you don't have one, a really good cast iron skillet that's well seasoned. And also, of course, like some people, even that industry with Teflon, framing that's bad for you because you're going to get some iron, right, from the cast iron skillet. it is negligible compared to what you're getting in the Teflon and all those
cast iron is
synthetic
way
chemicals.
healthier.
It's not even close. It's not even close. And of course, cooking traditionally, my mother-in-law, she cooks with a lot of stainless steel cookware, which is it's kind of hard to do, but she's figured out how, because it's like a dance, being able to
With the
use
oil
these
and
things. And also there's great ceramic options as well. There's many different.
Is that what you use, ceramic? What do you use in
It
your
just
household?
depends. It depends on the dish.
What you're cooking.
It depends on the dish. And so, but just sharing some
Is any of that
education-
in here?
Oh, it's all in there.
It's all in here.
But most importantly, Rev, I got to share this, because to tie all this together, my biggest struggle, I didn't know at the time, even when we didn't have much to eat, had my family known that eating together would provide some protection, which all of us had some kind of disease or dysfunction, all of us, even the children.
Yeah.
Me and my brother were in and out of the hospital with asthma. My sister had terrible eczema. Skin's just broken out all over. Constantly had to wear this cream like every day. My mother, obesity, diabetes, my stepfather, obesity, addiction, but we're all trying to get by living in this environment. And sometimes when we didn't have food to eat, there was this one moment, it's one of my most core experiences. Like you just said, like that was healing for you, when your family came into the kitchen together. But I remember this day, he was home from work because he worked the late shift as an executive chef at this fancy restaurant, ironically.
This is your stepdad?
Yeah. But we didn't have much food at our house a lot of times, but he could cook. It was amazing. And this time, we're opening, this was not an uncommon day, but you open the cabinets, there's nothing there. You're looking at a bunch of nothing. Like there's like tomato sauce. And then in the refrigerator, there's like some milk and government cheese, that block of cheese. If you don't know about government cheese, you can't understand government cheese. But it tasted good, actually, but it just didn't melt very well. And then we had some Texas toast, which was something maybe we got from the WIC program. But in the freezer, there was some deer sausage that my grandfather had hunted and sent. And I wasn't, psychologically, I wasn't trying to eat Bambi in my mind. I'm just like, but I didn't know what it was.
Right.
And so he took those ingredients that day when we were like, we're hungry, there's nothing to eat, and we're just like, we're hungry. And my little sister, my little brother, and he went in there and he looked around and he turned those ingredients that I just mentioned into pizza. He made pizza. The crust was that Texas toast. He had the tomato sauce in the cabinet that he seasoned up, and we used the government cheese and the deer sausage, and he made pizza out of it.
Wow.
And it didn't taste like Domino's, by the way. It didn't taste like that. But the fact that kids, we love pizza. And the fact that we were eating pizza. And
You were eating love.
And the fact that I was eating love and I was eating with him.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that moment. I'll never forget that moment. And this speaks to the immense creativity that can manifest from an environment that might seem like one of deprivation.
Right.
There's an opportunity to evoke this creativity. It's just where we're pointing it. And so that's carried over into this work as well. And the last part is, for me, even the accessibility. I'm like, as I'm looking at this data on eating together, maybe it's because you have more opportunity. Maybe it's because you have more money and you can do something like that. Listen to this. So I shared another study in the book that was done on minority children that are generally in the context of a low-income environment. They found that these kids eating together with their family, just 4 meals a week, any meals, 4 meals a week, those children ate 5 servings of fruits and vegetables at least 5 days a week, and significantly less ultra-processed food, namely chips and soda. And then researchers noted when the TV was never or rarely on was the key thing. And so even if we didn't have much money, had my family known that eating together could help to protect our health in some way, I know we would have done it. We just didn't know. Because I can count, I'm not exaggerating, Rev, I can count on my hands how many times we sat down and ate a meal together. It just didn't happen. It might be a random holiday when we do that. But my family, our family unit, mother, stepfather, brother and sister, myself, it just, we ate at the same time a lot of times, but we scattered. TV, video game, outside.
Right.
That wasn't a part of our culture.
Right.
And we do what we're aware of, right? Our culture is determining our choices. Our culture, even our cravings are cultural. We crave things that we've been exposed to.
Right.
And so understanding.
Become addicted to that because it's just the normal pattern of the chemicals that are being produced around that experience. You register that as good for you. Yeah.
And so just even knowing this, we can start to, again, understand it's not even taking our power back, right? We already have it. We just are unaware.
Right.
And being able to write the story, create a powerful microculture in your
Right.
own household. It starts with you.
Yeah.
And here's the cool
I'm
thing.
loving it. I'm doing a lot of that, but now I'm ready to skyrocket to a whole other level.
Yeah. And last thing, here's the thing. Also on that Hawaii trip, I realized that where you go, you take your culture with you. You can go into another culture, but you're an influential factor wherever you go.
Right.
That's the most powerful thing that you can do to affect change in the world around you, is to change yourself.
Yes.
And a family unit,
Yes.
a healthy family unit, wow. The impact that it has just when people see us move, you've seen this.
You sure?
It is infectious. It's not just bad stuff that can be viral. You know,
It's good stuff.
Good health, wellness can be
Health can be contagious.
contagious as well.
Optimism can be contagious. Love can be contagious. Hey, this is Shawn Stevenson, and you know what? I'm going to have him back again. So get ready for him, because there's so much information here, as well as his other books, just his whole life. He's a wellness encyclopedia. And so appreciate you being here with me. You know, I've seen some studies where because of the love and because of the family, even people eating bad food, because of the love, the serum that was produced in the blood was of a very high standard because of what you were saying, because they were together, they were in love, they were celebrating, you know. So there's a whole lot here. So this is called Eat Smarter. This is Shawn Stevenson, the Model Health Show, #1 in the USA. Check that out as well. Any last words? You covered a lot of material, man.
I mean, pick up the book anywhere that books are sold.
Right.
We have a national campaign at bookstores across the country. And most importantly, go to eatsmartercookbook.com. Eatsmartercookbook.com. We've got some wonderful bonuses there, a bunch of stuff we're giving away, even groceries, fitness equipment.
Really?
Yeah, all kinds of stuff, because we've got all these other great companies that are on this mission with us.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That are helping to invest in people and their health and families. And so pick up the Eat Smarter Family Cookbook anywhere the books are sold.
Eat Smarter Family Cookbook. Peace and blessings, everyone. Take back your mind. We'll see you soon. Peace and riches blessings to all of you. As I love to say, blessing is conferring life upon another. So I'm conferring life upon you, and we're conferring life upon each other. This is our moment of meditation. Meditation is paying undistractable attention to that which is real, that which is eternal, and that which is forever, the presence that is never an absence, of which we have emerged from. So we're going to take a few moments and we're going to dive into the silence. I want you to become still. At this moment, close the outer eyes, tap the space between the eyebrows, say to yourself, I can see without eyes. I can see without eyes. I can see without eyes. We keep the eyes closed. Take a breath. Sustain it at the apex of the breath. Establish an intention that you're willing to become a greater version of yourself. Release. As we turn within in this moment, we come to a sense of stillness, inner silence, and sacred solitude. Stillness, quietude and silence, sacred solitude. Notice that the body is breathing. Don't make yourself do any particular kind of breath right now. Just notice that the body is breathing. And as you're noticing that the body is breathing, you're noticing that the body is breathing presently. It is absolutely impossible to breathe in the future. It's impossible to breathe in the past. This breath is happening presently. So you are being present with your breath. It is a leap-off point to come to the eternal now. You're aware that Whatever environment you're in right now, there may be sounds going on, but you're not labeling these sounds noise. They're just sounds. You're not labeling them disturbance. They're just sounds. The thoughts bubbling up in your awareness are not disturbance. They're just thoughts. Emotional content that's emerging from the emotional body. We don't label that disturbance. It's just emotions that have emerged from chronic thought forms. Sensations in the bodies may emerge, the body temples. We're not saying they are disturbing, they're just sensations. So it's sounds, thoughts, emotions, and sensations happening. You're just becoming aware of all of that as it breaks into your consciousness. Your intention is to wake up to your glorious nature and all that is passing through your attention, sounds, thoughts, emotions, sensations. It's just passing through. It's not you. Stillness, silence, solitude. You're aware of what's passing through is not you. You are the awareness of that which is passing through your awareness. You're waking up to your real nature and being, which is eternal luminosity, light, love, intelligence, and beauty. This is the true pause that refreshes, regenerates, and renews. We allow ourselves to give something in this moment. We give thanks for the gift of life. And this dynamic feeling tone of thanksgiving allows for the cascade of tonic chemicals to flow through the body temple, vivifying our immune system, creating coherence for the brain, and a deep feeling tone of connectedness to life. And it's all happening now. And so it is. And so we let it be. As you slowly open your eyes, feel this pause that refreshed. Give thanks for your life. And feel that all is well. Even if you can't physically see that all is well yet, feel it. And the universal presence via law will match that feeling. The universal presence via law will match that feeling. And you will more and more manifest more good than you could possibly imagine in your life. Thank you for joining yourself in this moment of meditation. Now, many of you have written in thanking me for the Take Back Your Mind podcast, and many of you are saying, how can we support it? You can support Take Back Your Mind through this right now through the supporting of the sponsors Agape International Spiritual Center is the primary sponsor. Go to agapelive.com. There you can make a donation to the spiritual community. Put in your donation, podcast. That way we know you're watching and you're supporting. Also, join the podcast. That is, subscribe to the podcast and give a great rating and send it to your friends. That's how you can support. Secondly, you can go to Nutrarise.com, look for Adaptogen, 2 products. One is the Superfood Greens. The other product is the Vitamin D3K2. Get the bundle. Support your physical health as we've been talking about with Shawn Stevenson. You'll be supporting the sponsors and supporting your health at the very same time. Have a beautiful and bright day. Your time is very valuable, so I want to thank you for lending us your ear and participating in taking back your mind. If you want to submit a question for the question of the week, please submit it to podcast@michaelbeckwith.com. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, please submit a review and let us know your thoughts. Stay on top of current episodes by subscribing to the podcast so that you'll receive alerts and not miss one single episode. And feel free to share this podcast with all of your friends and family. And until we meet again, take back your mind and you will take back your life. Peace and blessings.